Whether you prefer disrupting your opponent's arsenal with Command and Conquer, or Destructive Aethertide, welcome to the channel. No matter how experienced you are at Flesh and Blood, wizards can be some of the most challenging heroes to face. Even if you pack Arcane Barrier, Spell Void, and Oasis Respite in your sideboard, arcane-focused mages like Kano are still tough to beat. Battle Mages, however, can be even more difficult, threatening large amounts of physical damage as the cherry on top of the arcane sundae. Playing against them can feel like an uphill battle. They have good disruption and tankiness that makes them difficult to rush down. They can also pivot against slower control decks, putting out potions and auras to set up massive endgame combos, while sending mid-range attacks to chip you down until their lethal combo is all but guaranteed. While most decks are limited to rushdown, control, or setup playstyles, Battle Mages can switch between two versions of the deck that can counter both fast and slow strategies. In my last video, Which Flesh and Blood Hero Should You Play?, I talked about the four major archetypes in the game: Rushdown, Control, Setup, and All-Rounder, and how the game's building blocks create heroes with unique playstyles. I'll be using the same design principles discussed in that video to break down the core strengths of Battle Mages, as well as go over the Battle Mage heroes throughout Flesh and Blood's history heading into High Seas. I'm hoping that this video will become the first in a series breaking down the various playstyles in Flesh and Blood. Without further ado, let's jump into the fundamentals of Battle Mages. At its core, the Battle Mage playstyle can be summarized by breaking down the archetype's name into its two parts. Simply put, Battle Mages are mages who battle. While the whole point of Flesh and Blood is to battle other heroes, the battle component describes mages who excel in continuous fights that span multiple turn cycles. More specifically, battle mages succeed when both heroes' goals are to attack and defend efficiently. Because your resources to attack and defend, also known as your hand, refresh at the end of your own turn, battle mages play above-rate cards that help them gain more value than their opponents each turn cycle until they find the right opportunity to close out the game with evasive spells. Battle mages excel in this type of combat thanks to tools that extend their survivability. On defense, above-rate defense reactions block well and often advance their core game plan. Think of cards like Rootbound Carapace and Reduced to Runechant, which defend for 4 and provide additional value with decomposing and creating runechants respectively. On offense, Battle Mages rely on above-rate mid-range attacks. These often come in the form of 3-for-7s with additional upside, like Fiandal's Fighting Spirit and Wounded Bull, which get extra value when you have less life than your opponent. Because most action cards block for 3, 7-power attacks are notoriously difficult to fully cover up. Furthermore, the game's pitch mechanic means that these attacks only use up one card, since any cards you pitch in order to pay for the attack's resource costs stay in deck rather than go to the graveyard. By pitching blues to play these mid-range attacks, Battle Mages get to extract even more value when they later attack, block, or repitch the same blue in later cycles of the game. Even if the damage is covered up with a 3-block and a 0-for-4 defense reaction, this still puts the Battle Mage ahead on cards with each exchange. Outside of Unmovable and a handful of Guardian defense reactions, the defending hero must give up 2 cards from deck, and sometimes armor, to fully block out these attacks. While these exchanges often put Battle Mages ahead on life totals, they almost always put them ahead on deck totals as well. Moving on to the second most important part of the Battle Mage playstyle is the Mage component. It's not enough to run defense reactions and mid-range attacks to call yourself a Battle Mage. If that were the case, every deck running Sink Below and Command and Conquer would be considered a Battle Mage. Instead, Battle Mages supplement efficiency with arcane spells and amp effects to finish opponents off with evasive damage. Since equipment slots largely limit how much arcane damage a hero can prevent at a time, Battle Mages can end games with arcane combos that overwhelm opponents' defenses by setting up properly. Many Battle Mages do this by playing out potions and other permanents that synergize with their main combo pieces, dealing an overwhelming amount of damage to end the game. For example, energy potions and frost hexes synergize with Iyslander's specialization Ice Eternal, while healing potions synergize with Rampant Growth Life and Surgent Aethertide in Verdance. Each Battle Mage has slightly different setup tools, but these combos aim to secure victory against slower heroes who fail to apply sufficient pressure. The final pillar of the Battle Mage playstyle is Disruption, which keeps opponents on the back foot. For example, Command and Conquer threatens Arsenal and prevents opponents from playing defense reactions. This demands multiple cards to save their own power cards, while giving the Battle Mage breathing room to set up auras and potions on a later turn. Furthermore, Disruption from Felling of the Crown and Plow Under can be optimized so that only the defending hero has to bottom a card, making it difficult for them to return similar amounts of damage. On top of disruptive attacks, Battle Mages have a suite of spells spells that target opponents on the arcane axis. When amped, Mind Warp and Destructive Aethertide require pitching to Arcane Barrier to avoid losing cards. Combining these tenets make Battle Mages some of the most powerful mid-range heroes in the game. Their strong disruptive tools extend their own survivability by weakening their opponents. Furthermore, this gives them time to set up devastating late-game combos to finish opponents, while still being able to maximize value across turn cycles. While many classes have unique strengths and weaknesses, arcane damage is a fundamental part of the Battle Mage playstyle. Before moving into the history of today's archetype, it's important to note that Battle Mages are not confined to the Wizard class. Even though Iyslander and Verdance are both well-known Battle Mages, any class with arcane damage could theoretically support the Battle Mage playstyle. Heading into High Seas, however, only Wizards, Runeblades, and Illusionists currently have the potential to be Battle Mages. It should be clear why Wizards are natural candidates to be Battle Mages. Even though they lack physical damage, arcane spells are the main draw of the class. They have access to powerful spells like Ether Wildfire, Swell Tidings, and Burn Bear, as well as amp effects in the form of Kindle, Exploding Ether, and many others. What they lack in physical damage, Wizards make up for by amping and dealing massive amounts of arcane damage at a time. Because Wizards tend to be more frail than other classes, Battle Mages from this class try to keep their life totals on par with their opponents. Even though Wizards have no innate access to physical attacks, generic and talented ones help to threaten life totals efficiently. Disruption and Sustain also help Battle Mages stay healthy while setting up a board state when needed. There are a few Wizard staffs that lend themselves towards the Battle Mage playstyle. The first is Waning Moon, which helps Battle Mages tack on additional chip damage, while Surge and Aethertide can double up amp effects to punish opponents that skimp out on Arcane Barrier. Both of these allow Wizards to deal evasive arcane damage over the course of the game, making victory more inevitable the longer the game goes on. While not as clear-cut as Wizards, Runeblades also have many tools that lend themselves to the Battle Mage playstyle. Although Runeblades have a few standalone spells that deal arcane damage on their own, a lot of their arcane damage is dependent on sending physical damage as well. Split damage attacks like Arcanic Crackle and Vexing Malice deal both physical and arcane damage in a single blow. Runechants further supplement the archetype, which build on the board and are destroyed when an attack is declared, dealing 1 point of arcane damage to the opponent per runechant. Even though they're easily prevented with Arcane Barrier 1, Runeblade Battle Mages aim to generate a stack of them before sending an attack. Furthermore, Runeblades have many cards that synergize with setup plans based around runechants, most notably Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, Arknight Ascendancy, and Looming Doom. When looking at Shadow Runeblades, Runegate attacks double or even triple the value of each runechant by reducing the attack's cost, dealing arcane damage, and increasing the likelihood of the Runegate attacks on hurt effect. These attacks lend themselves to the mid-range playstyle, while incentivizing opponents to prevent all incoming damage. Earth Runeblades, on the other hand, gained a key Battle Mage piece in the form of Channel the Millennium Tree, which amps the first runechant to 4 arcane damage, making it much more evasive. Even stronger with this card, however, was Scepter of Pain, which combined with amp a little too well, threatening 4 arcane damage and creating up to 4 runechants based on the total damage dealt. While we haven't seen any Battle Mage Illusionists yet, they have arcane damage as a tertiary part of their identity. Even though large Phantasm attacks seem to fit the playstyle, their arcane damage is currently limited to small pings, mostly from select auras and allies. At the time of recording, there haven't been many notable arcane-focused strategies in Illusionists, besides Merciful Retribution in OG Prism, and Burn Them All in Dromai. However, LSS is great at designing new playstyles within existing classes, so new Illusionists could have the potential to be built as Battle Mages in the future. Now that we've covered the core fundamentals of the playstyle, you should have a pretty good idea of what constitutes a Battle Mage. We'll continue by looking at the archetype success, and discuss what enabled these heroes to be played as Battle Mages overall. In this section, I'll briefly go over how Iyslander paved the way for the playstyle, and touch on how Vynnset and Florian have been built as Battle Mages as well. Lastly, my buddy Jesse from Min-Maxing will go over what makes Verdance shine in the pool of Battle Mages, and we'll end by covering why you should consider playing the archetype overall. I couldn't start this section without mentioning the OG Battle Mage, Iyslander Stormbind. While this playstyle is the main reason Iyslander is so well known and beloved by players around the world, she wasn't always known for her Battle Mage variant. During the months following Stormbind's release in Uprising, Iyslander initially followed in Kano's footsteps, running combo-oriented lists that mostly ran arcane spells and other non-attack actions. There were a few successful early brews running attacks like Command and Conquer and Yellow Thandal's Fighting Spirit, but these attacks' main purpose was to pop dragons and heralds, while other lists ran a single copy of Nourishing Emptiness as its only attack. attack. However, Iyslander's playstyle was fundamentally changed during the US National Championship 3 months later, when Michael Hamilton's Bullander list took the world by storm, forever changing how Iyslander would be played. Rather than running just a handful of attacks in the sideboard for illusionists, Michael Hamilton ran a staggering 16 attack actions in his list. While the list was unknown before US Nationals, Hamilton's first place finish led players to start bringing more attack actions than seen before the tournament. Cards that were once considered draft chaff like Fyendal's Fighting Spirit and Wounded Bull became Iyslander staples following his tournament-winning run. Even though the list was a known quantity during the 2022 World Championships, Bullander was crowned as the best deck in the world, proving that players needed to respect Bullander if they wanted to see their own competitive success. However, what made Iyslander so good as a battle mage over Kano? One of the things that made Iyslander perform so well as a battle mage was how her hero ability interacted with non-attack actions when compared to Kano's. While both heroes' abilities allowed them to play non-attack actions at instant speed, Kano's was much more restrictive. When threatened by lethal damage, attack actions were actually a liability for Kano. In fact, most of his lists ran 60 non-attack actions in deck, sometimes risking a fabled copy of Eye of Ophidia to help stack the deck in his favor. On the other hand, Iyslander's hero ability gave her more agency to run attack actions, since she only needed to arsenal her blue non-attack actions to be able to play them at instant speed. Because the evasion of arcane spells is balanced by dealing less damage than similarly costed attacks, battle mages were far more efficient at maximizing value each turn cycle when compared to pure arcane builds. Additionally, Red Wounded Bull and Fyendal's Fighting Spirit synergized perfectly when Iyslander already started with less life than most other heroes, getting even more value from the extra damage dealt or life recovered respectively. Getting 8 points of value with these attacks was often far better than dealing 4 arcane damage with Red Ether Hail and 2 arcane damage with Waning Moon on your own turn. In hindsight, it seemed like a no-brainer for Iyslander to run both attacks and non-attacks. Physical attacks helped her to grind opponents' life totals down, while non-attack spells disrupted opponents and helped her get the last few points of arcane damage in to win the game. On a macro level, Iyslander had consistent power through all stages of the game. Because blue spells have the same defense but less damage than their red counterparts, Iyslander would block with her worst blues, save icy blues in arsenal to disrupt her opponent's turns, and pitch blue finishers to send above rate attacks. Bullander excelled when she could walk both heroes' life totals down towards 0. Across turn cycles, she had a higher and more consistent value ceiling than her arcane focus builds, without sacrificing damage, disruption, or evasion. Her physical attacks maximized the damage threatened early, while her elemental disruption helped her stay healthy in the mid-game, and her pitch spells would close out game's second cycle by presenting evasive arcane damage on her opponent's turn. Once her opponents reached low enough life thresholds, they could never tap out of resources on their own turn, in case Iyslander had lethal damage between an arcane spell in arsenal, Stormstriders, and Waning Moon. These 3 tools ensured that she always had at least 1 extra turn to try to pull victory from the jaws of defeat. A few months before Iyslander hit Living Legend and Classic Constructed, Vynnset Iron Maiden was released in Dusk Till Dawn. As a Shadow Runeblade, many fans hoped that she would be the rushdown successor to Chain Bound by Shadow, following his rotation out of the format. However, her ability caused her to play much more differently than Chain. Instead of creating 1 soul shackle per turn to eventually build an insurmountable hand of extra blood deck cards and banish, Vynnset always needed to banish a card from her hand at the start of each turn. Even though she gained a rune chant for doing so, it reduced her ability to naturally go wide, an area where Chain excelled. Instead, Vynnset was designed to play more similarly to a battle mage like Iyslander than a rushdown hero like Chain. Shifting her playstyle towards the battle mage playstyle was the rune gate mechanic introduced in Dusk Till Dawn. Rather than paying resource costs, Vynnset could play rune gate attacks from Banish for free once she had generated enough rune chants. Even though this keyword was relatively straightforward, it took players time to optimize its interactions with Vynnset's ability. Vynnset lacked the consistency of her Runeblade predecessors following her release in DTD, but Rosetta gave her a lot of cards to support the Battle Mage playstyle. Deadwood Dirge and Malefic Incantation gave her consistent rune chant generation needed to become a true powerhouse. Deadwood Dirge meant that she could play a 3-cost Runegate attack without any prior setup, allowing her to have consistent 2-card 9 plays. Opponents needed to respect both the arcane and physical components of her attacks, since many of them had on-hurt effects which cared about any damage being dealt. Vynnset asks her opponents whether they want to block all of the damage or suffer the consequences when even a single point of damage is let through. Respecting the on-hurt effects often gave Vynnset the breathing room to set up a board state of malefic incantations to further empower her future turns. The second component of Vynnset's hero ability gave her pure arcane damage evasion when playing a shadow non-attack action, allowing her to trade her own life points for her opponents through completely unpreventable damage. This enabled Vynnset to double up on her attack's on-hurt effects. For example, if she paid a life for Envelop in Darkness on a Deathly Wail turn, she would automatically set up 2 more rune chants when the combat chain closed, ensuring that she could keep her string of Runegate Haymakers intact. Versus mid-range decks, defensive tools like Reduce to Runechant and Haunting Rendition gave her survivability, while generating rune chants for her next Runegate turn, while Cull provided instant speed disruption that could be used offensively or defensively. On offense, she had a slew of on-hurt disruption effects with Widespread Annihilation, Destruction, and Ruin to keep opponents on the back foot. Against more defensive decks, she could build up several Runegate attacks and Banish, trading life points from Blood Debt for the ability to go wide. Eloquence tokens, as well as spells like Shadow Puppetry and Tear Through the Portal, allowed her to have enormous go-wide turns that even Oldhim, Grandfather of Eternity, would struggle to fully prevent if he were still legal and classic constructed today. During the endgame, drawing a single shadow non-attack action allowed Vynnset to close out the game with pure arcane evasion as long as she had a life point or 2 to spare. While there have been 2 mainstream versions of Florian played since his release on Rosetta and the end of the Hunted meta, only one of them can fully be described as a Battle Mage. Even though stack Florian with Scepter of Pain builds up a lot of rune chants to combo opponents in a single turn, this version is actually more accurately defined as a tank mage, since this version aims to block out defensively until enough rune chants have been generated to OTK opponents with a single attack like Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath. This Florian build followed in the footsteps of another tank mage, Turtle Burst Visceri, which saw prominence around the heavy hitters meta. While I won't be covering these in depth today, let me know if you'd like to see a video on tank mages or any other playstyle. However, Florian's mid-range build with Channel the Millennium Tree and Channel Mount Heroic plays identically to a Battle Mage. The mid-range version of Florian epitomized mid-range value, attacking and defending more efficiently than most other heroes. On defense, Rootbound Carapace gained defensive value for decomposing Earth cards into his Banish Zone, eventually giving his Earth equipment pieces, Barkskin of the Millennium Tree and Well Grounded, more defensive value than many other heroes' equipment suites. In his weapon slot, Reaping Blade prevented Florian's opponents from gaining life when ahead. Even though the weapon affected both heroes, he could come back from a life deficit with melded life cards and Fruits of the Forest to keep him healthy while also adding Earth cards to his graveyard, enabling his powerful decomposers. Felling of the Crown and Plowunder also sent good amounts of damage while also disrupting his opponent's hand and arsenal respectively. While many attacks were sent along with a rune chant or 2 after getting online, he would also fuse Bramble Spark to add more mixed damage to his attacks. Adding to his overall output, Channel the Millennium Tree and Channel Mount Heroic made it nearly impossible to defend without leaking some damage each turn. Because Florian thrived at sending mixed damage, opponents had to decide whether to err towards arcane prevention or physical defenses with their armor selection at the start of the game. Either way, it was difficult to stop Florian's total damage output. Once opponents were low enough and his hero ability was online, his specialization Germinate would set up enough rune chants to close out the game. Even without Germinate, he could hold the tempo by pressuring 1-card 5s by pitching a blue to pay for Grasp of the Arknight and swing with Reaping Blade each turn.
Ending this section is Verdance, the first official hero designated as a Battle Mage. Unlike previous wizards, Verdance starts at 40 life, making her much more capable of taking hits than her predecessors. Additionally, as an Earth Wizard, Verdance gains access to the large attacks in the Earth talent, such as Plowunder, Felling of the Crown, and many red 3/7s. Her equipment suite also complements the Battle Mage playstyle, offering a mix of defensive power in Barkskin of the Millennium Tree, and wizardy trickery between Plume of Evergrowth and Storm Striders. Verdance's disruption combined with her focus on life gain makes it difficult to kill her before she can grind you down. Similar to Florian, Verdance's ability lends itself to the Battle Mage archetype. Once her hero ability is online, it makes her life gain cards that much more above rate as she pings opponents down for 1 arcane damage each time she gains life on her own turn. Access to Rootbound Carapace allows her to decompose defensively, while Fruits of the Forest acts as a multimodal card, whose discard effect can easily allow Verdance to heal up while also filling her graveyard. She's able to set up a board state of healing potions to synergize with Rampant Growth Life, plus Surge and Aethertide in order to OTK slow our opponents, or flex to Energy Potions plus Fertile Ground to do massive instant speed arcane. Unlike full arcane lists that can run out of gas against opponents heavily teched into Arcane Barrier and Null Rune, the Battle Mage playstyle of running enough 3-for-7 physical attacks will run your opponents out of cards, while Evergreen plus So Tomorrow getting back Felling of the Crown allows for surprising late game inevitability versus fatigue if they do manage to survive or disrupt a no DK combo. Verdance really shines as a Battle Mage in mid-range matchups, where arcane pings and constant chip can cause your opponent to struggle on multiple fronts, forcing them to pitch cards that they then regret don't get to hit the combat chain as blocks when you follow up with things like Command and Conquer or Felling of the Crown. The value really ramps up as the game goes on, and leaves you feeling in control once you have assembled a massive board state of Earth cards in Banish, Ring of Roses in play, and potions available.
Overall, Battle Mages are a unique playstyle that a few heroes over Fab's history have been able to pull off so far. When the pieces come together, they can be incredibly tricky to play against, but incredibly rewarding to master. In today's video, we talked about the major Battle Mages heading into high seas and touched on their fundamental strengths and play patterns. What do you think about Battle Mages though? Are there any other playstyles or archetypes you'd like me to cover next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Before I end the video, I want to give a huge shout out to Jesse over at Min-Maxing for covering Verdance in the video and helping me brainstorm the fundamental strengths of Battle Mages overall. He makes some great Verdance content, so check out his channel if you want to get better at playing the hero. Lastly, if you made it to this point, I hope it means that you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. I'm nearing 1,000 subscribers, so leaving a like and subscribing to the channel would help me out a ton. That's all I have for today though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.